Hello, everybody. Good morning to everyone out there. Welcome to Dudes Talking, episode 36. Today, I have with me, welcoming back esteemed researcher Bork from packandlaw.us. We're going to discuss the financial system and how we are put under it, and how possibly some alternatives or ways that we may be able to break ourselves from the system. How are you doing this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the United States, Mr. Bork? Whoever's listening, wherever y'all are, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good today. How are you?
Doing good. So, I guess we should start with the federal income tax, which you and I have discussed, on our previous episode together, that the federal income tax was not originally how the United States government collected its revenue. It was originally from tariffs. And now, for some reason or another, by hook or by crook, that's slowly changed into a platform where now we have both the income tax, among other taxes that are put upon us, and tariffs as well. So they've added on tax upon tax upon tax of the American citizens, have they not?
That's correct. We could start with tariffs or
Yeah.
go to the property tax.
Let's start with tariffs.
Okay. Tariffs, they are the main way a country makes revenues to keep its country going or its people. And basically, even people like, maybe I'm jumping the gun here by going to this, but Bastiat, was it Frederick Bastiat, wrote a piece called The Law, and he was griping about tariff law, basically, because his family was rich and they were charging, this wasn't in America, but it's worldwide, people in commerce, complain about it because it rips into their profits, the mercantilist.
Yes.
And Bastiat's family was rich, one of the few families that wasn't of the synagogue of Satan nature that were involved in, mercantilism. A lot of the families were, of Jewish descent or whatever you want to say. Call those people, and the whole New World Order is basically based on that mercantilism, and so the New World Order's whole trip is to get rid of those taxes and make the people pay for the taxation that makes revenue for the country or their countries or the state, as they call them. A lot of people call it statism. So that's the nuts and bolts of the tariff laws.
So instead of
Tariff
having
taxes.
a tax on import-export between states or countries, and being charged for, when you purchase your goods, instead of having that as the basis of an economic system so that a country can earn revenue based off that system, instead it went to a direct tax on people as far as their income and how much they earn. But the sad thing is we still pay tariffs.
Yeah.
So we're paying both now, where I
Well,
believe that a consumption...
multiple.
Yeah, multiple, which I believe a consumption tax, is how our founding fathers envisioned how a country should pay its debts, how it should get its revenue, instead of taxing one's income or taxing one's property, because in that basis you never really truly own your property, do you not? You may pay off your house, you may pay off your mortgage, but you're still paying property taxes. And in doing so, they can, if you fall behind on your taxes, they can come and levy liens or take your property, can they not?
You're right. And that would be the first tax that the Constitution did away with, is the property, or not did away with, but instituted as property tax. Hamilton was one of the people that talked in the Federalist Papers about installing a property tax. And having people that voted own property to be able to vote, and that changed with the 14th Amendment system. Some people call it going into a democracy state or a mobocracy instead of the original system where you had to own property. But still, that was a bad thing because um, to alleviate the import-export taxes between the state, they were implementing the property tax to make up for that. And still to this day, there's no taxation for mercantilists, going from state to state with excise, or not excise, but tariffs between the
No, there's
states.
no tariffs between the states.
Right. So that's made up with the property tax, and that's been since they put the Constitution in place, and that's been all to benefit the people in mercantilism, which is basically a middleman, instead of the manufacturer of goods or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and of course now we have online taxes where they'll do sales tax depending on what state. Like I live in North Carolina, for example, so if I buy something off of Amazon, I have to pay a sales tax from that. So now they're starting to tax different internet services
Right.
and purchasing, which they did not previously beforehand. So that'll be another tax that they're adding to the American people as a way to collect state or local taxes. How do you feel about local and state taxes versus your more federal type income tax? Are you okay with local taxes if they're like a excise tax, like a sales tax,
Oh
over a
yeah,
property
that
tax?
yeah, I don't mind that. Not the property tax, but a tax on sales goods that are local, the end user. See, import-export taxes are generally not the end user, and
Well,
so there's another.
they're passing them on to the end user now, but they used to be
Right,
between the mercantiles themselves. So
right. So that tax is probably one of the only lawful taxes I agree with that is charged to people. But as you said at the top of the show here or broadcast, they're taxing us on everything, multiple times. The most filthy or evil tax is the income tax because they're taking our labors. And originally yeah, that's part of Marxism or communism, uh, income tax. It didn't start until Lincoln. And, Karl Marx wrote a thank you letter for Lincoln winning the war or starting the war. I think he was, killed soon after, of course, or assassinated. But Karl Marx and company did send Lincoln a thank you letter for starting that war and getting it instituted. Basically, it was for the working men of the world to get freedom from the middle class businesses, which is a bunch of hogwash. It was, I look at the Communist Manifesto, which was written in 1848, just before the Civil War, so-called Civil War, was instituted. It was a war to install communism in America. All the planks of the Communist Manifesto are installed in the United States, along with a lot of its dogma is seen. And the income tax, like I said, was put in place by Lincoln. The Republican Party was formed by rich industrialists. They were called radical Republicans. Uh, they are the ones that really are the the Communist Party. Now that are people are looking at the Democrats to be the socialist or communist, but really it was the Republican Party that started it. Lincoln put the Department of Agriculture in place in 1863, I believe it was, and that is the sickle of communism. And the industrialist I mentioned that started the Republican Party, or the hammer, which is industry represents the hammer of communism. So that was the start of the communist system in the United States, unbeknownst to a lot of people in the world, and especially the United States. They don't get it. But the income tax takes taxes directly from the labors or profits from a company. Uh, you know, well, they originally were part of corporate corporate structure, and in 1930s, the Supreme Court. It was, I don't know, it was Eisner versus Macomber was the case, but I forget what year that was. But the Supreme Court, that was soon after the 1913, after they put the Federal Reserve Act in place, or the income tax rather, and the Federal Reserve was put in place, which is one of the planks of the Communist
1920
Manifesto.
was Eisner versus Macomber.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I dates get mixed up sometimes with me. So yeah, 1913 happened. Then 7 years later, like you say, 1920 is when Eisner versus Macomber came to be, and basically the court said that income was the profit from corporations. So what Congress did during the FDR reign, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, they changed the definition of income to meaning any money that anyone brings in, and they got Americans to pay income tax by offering the perk Social Security. So that's the vehicle they used to get them to steal their property, meaning their labors or whatever they did from them, by offering this perk called Social Security. That was the foot in the door for them to start stealing and enslaving Americans with the income tax, which is total theft. It's slavery, in my estimation. Anytime you take someone's labor, a direct tax like that, it's basically theft and slavery.
Yes, 100% agree with you on that. I could not say it better myself. So Lincoln did, put forth, and it was eventually put into law, the Revenue Act of 1861. Now, Lincoln said that he needed to institutionalize and put in place an income tax and a property tax, so that they could fund the Civil War, and that's why it was necessary to do so. So beforehand, both of this led, this Revenue Act of 1861 led to the Internal Revenue Service being formed to collect the taxes in 1862. So before then, you would pay local, taxes, and the United States government would collect tariffs. But after this structure, you would have tariffs, property tax, and income tax, all being charged to the population of the United States, the American citizens, away from the corporations themselves, which used to pay the tariffs. So in doing so, you end up, with almost triple taxation at that point. Even though the income tax at that time was a flat rate of 3%. But, of course, it's not nowhere near that now.
Right.
And once they pass a law, they're always going to increase the amount of money that they need, which is usually what happens. And, of course, Miss Otterson in the chat also mentioned civil asset forfeiture, where they can seize your property without even charging you of a crime. Yeah, that happens very often now, does it not? Especially with the expanded reaches of the Patriot Act.
Yes.
And so-called terrorism, that they could come, take your house if you're not even, convicted of a crime, but just charged with one. And in doing so, you see that in a lot of drug cases where a person hasn't even been convicted yet, but they've seized their house and their bank accounts and their vehicles before they're even convicted of a crime.
Yes, war on this, war on that. It's excuses to take property.
Yes.
Well, citizens of the United States are deemed criminals per Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. It's kind of a hidden, operation of law where people vote. They're turned into criminals. And of course, people that are U.S. citizens are partners in crime. Even though they don't vote, they're still party to this rebellion under the 14th Amendment. You can't vote unless you participate in rebellion. That's what my work centers around, is 14th Amendment, called the Red Amendment. It's my book, the Red Amendment. But they set that up so they could have this legal fiction to steal people's property at will and create laws to do that. As you mentioned, these Patriot Acts and all this are contingent or play upon that, so they have the right to violate constitutional protections and use whatever they deem necessary to take the property under communism. And that's, I think, plank 3. It's taking the property of immigrants and rebels. It's either 2, it's 3, I think. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I mean that it's all a way for them to fund the elite class, for them to fund the wars that are necessary to conquer more territory or to take more oil, or even some people could say to try to attempt to force God's hand to fulfill religious prophecy that was handed down in Revelation that the Dominionists are trying to do in the Middle East currently. But they've always had reasons why they needed to increase or put in taxes in place to fund the beast system, and to take away from what the government is supposed to do as a representative republic, and instead has moved more to a democracy or by mob rule.
Yeah, that's what they call. I think democracy is a secret code word for communism, world communism. The United States is party to installing all these governments all over the world, and they said we're bringing democracy to this country or these people, and that's just world communism, basically.
Yeah,
It's basically slavery by volunteering. Voting is agreement to whatever the government does.
yeah, and of course with them bringing us into this beast system, we lose our rights more and more. I do believe that the United States, even from its inception, was an Illuminati experiment to give us rights and then slowly take them away through different mechanisms, and also slowly to take away freedom, but also to allow other things to take place too.
Yep.
And it's kind of like putting a frog in a pot of water and slowly turning up the temperature. That's all this has been since the very beginning, and they've done it through different systems, and one of them being, like you mentioned, voting. Voting's a sham. Even if people think that voting is even gets anything done, how many times do, for example, the Republicans vote for a Republican Senate or Republican House, and then when it comes time for push to shove for things that Republican voters want to have done, like the repeal of Obamacare, for example, that didn't happen. So how many times have the Republicans let their own constituents down, and yet we continue to put reelect, if the voting is even real, the same people to the same positions with incumbents and everything. So it's just it's just insane to people think that our government is doing anything for its people or being representative as a republic should be. We're not even close to being that at all at this point.
Right, like you said, it's a democracy now, and as far as I'm concerned, like I said, it's a code word for communism, an agreement to what they're doing worldwide. And back what you said a few minutes ago, or at the top of the broadcast, about property being taken. This is out of Senate document number 43, Senate Resolution 62, page 9, paragraph 2 of April 17th, 1933. The ultimate ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government law amounting to the mere user, and must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. So, like you referenced, ownership of property is an illusion. The legal system sets it up so they can take it at will, and basically that's doing away with property ownership like the Communist Manifesto dictated. So it's all an illusion. And that's why I got out 25 years ago. I haven't paid the corporations any money for 25 years, meaning insurance companies and whatever else goes along with that. I haven't paid income tax in 25 years either, and not paying into it. Now, don't expect anything. That's socialism, and that's why Marx said you need socialism to have communism, which is basically their, uh, profiteering system on mercantilism. And you mentioned that Trump just made a new trade deal with China.
Yes.
Yep. So
And NAFTA
there you have
2.0
it.
down there in Mexico. So
Yeah.
it's still, them Chinese accepting more of our dairy and our meat, and it's just. I'm for tariffs, but only if we abolish all the other taxes
Yeah.
that are put in place by the United States government. Like if we're gonna have tariffs, then by all means do it. But with Trump not abolishing the income tax or any of the taxes, and is putting in tougher tariffs, yeah, it's going to cause a problem because we're going to have to end up we're paying those prices. That's why the prices of food has gone up, for example, since Trump has been in office, is because of these tariffs. I mean, the farmers aren't going to pay it, the corporations aren't going to pay it. It's going to be given to us. The stores aren't
Yeah.
going to pay the increased tax on these goods. We end up paying it. So you can't have one. You can't have all of them. You can only have one. And I guess if I had to choose any of it, it would be a consumption tax. But the thing is they're not going to ever do that. The Republicans like to try to talk the good talk. You have Herman Cain up there with flat tax. I remember Neil Bortz used to talk about flat tax being more of a libertarian. That'll never happen. None of that, nothing like that will ever happen in the United States because it's the way the beast system is set up, to take our money whenever possible. And like you said, the property is of the government. It is of the state, and they can do what with it they see fit. I mean, look at eminent domain, for example. If the government wants to put a highway by your house or whatever, or wants to do anything, they can come in and offer you a fair amount for your property. And of course, I say that in quotation marks. But in reality, if you don't take that fair amount, they can seize your property because it's for the common good of the people. I'd actually argue it's not for the common good of the people. It's for the common good for the governments themselves.
Well, it's for the corporate rich. And one thing I noted when I first started studying law is basically the capitalist is always looking for a way to pawn off his operating expenses on the people of the country he's doing business with. And as we've seen or just talked about in the last half hour, they've doubled and tripled and quadrupled taxed us to make more profit themselves. These people are so greedy that eventually I don't know what they're going to do to fund or make profits anymore because there's not going to be any money that the people have to pay taxes with. They're so stupid and greedy.
And we didn't even talk about capital gains tax. God forbid you sell a property or you make an investment and end up making money on a said investment. You have to end up paying capital gain taxes on that as well. And we all know that the elite, the 1%, they're not paying, their fair share when it comes to the taxes. They have many ways that they can escape paying, shell companies, limited liability corporations, donations. They have many ways that they can not have to pay these taxes. So capital gain is just another tax put upon us that people like you and I, if we end up just, let's say we inherit a property, or we end up purchasing a property and then we end up eventually selling it down the line. Sometimes if you inherit a property, you don't have to pay capital gains, but you end up having to pay the government for making money off of that.
Right.
Or if you buy a house and it increases in how much it is worth, its value, you have to end up paying money in it. So again, any way you make money, the government's going to come by and get its share. And that's how it's built into the beast system is to do that is to tax no matter how amount of money where you make said money and how you make said money unless you're one of the elite rich. It doesn't matter for them. They don't have to pay.
Yeah, the whole system is set up for the elite. And just so people understand, there was no such thing as a capitalist until about 1817, rather. And that's when Noah Webster defined it. I'm not saying that there weren't these type people around or people didn't have capital at that time, but as an entity or a system of economy or whatever, it didn't exist until 1817. And this is what a capitalist was defined as by Webster, Noah Webster, back in 1828. About 10 years later, he defined it, or, it was defined before then by him, but this is out of his dictionary. Capitalist, a man who has capital or stock in trade, usually denoting a man of large property, which is or may be employed in business. Okay. So when a small businessman starts a business, he might have some capital that his parents left him or whatever, if the inheritance tax, which is another Marxist thing to do away with is inheritance, because the purpose of Marxism is to keep everyone working consistently so they can make profits off what they produced and sold, be it their labor or whatever, so the elite can get richer. But a small businessman might have to take out a loan to start a small business. From a capitalist. They have the money. So being a small businessman is not being a capitalist, is my point. Entrepreneur is not a capitalist per se.
No, I don't see how they would be. Of course, they're always pushing free market capitalism, are they not?
Yes, but that's another useful idiot program uh, put out by the Mises Institute. A lot of the people that preach Mises, I wrote a paper on that too a while back. I just gave you some papers to post on taxation today. I'm sure you have it on the page.
Yes,
Uh,
I will
yep,
put them on there.
yep,
And I've read your paper on Ludwig van Mises, von
right.
Mises, should I say? It's an excellent paper, and sums up of how free trade capitalism it's not for us. It's for
No,
the world governments and the elite, and it harms the average person, even though their average, conservative who is pouted into their head that free trade is the way to go, whether it's by Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh or Benjamin Shapiro. It's all free market is absolute best, and there's absolute freedom with the free market. You can do whatever you want. You can make money however, by any means, and it's completely free, and that it's the complete opposite of communism. I completely disagree. I think that's
no, it's
ludicrous.
all it all works together.
Yes, yes. Can you explain a little bit of why that is?
When I read the Communist Manifesto, I pulled out two things that stuck out to me, and it was basically a manifesto is a declaration of war in international law, and basically it was the I say basically a lot. Sorry about that, but it's a fundamental war against countries and their economies. Its purpose was to create a workforce and to one, create a workforce, and two, close down or shut down middle class businesses. And all this in effort to put the profits in the hands of the elite, which would be the Zionists in this case. And the Zionists don't have to be the Synagogue of Satan members necessarily. They needed useful idiots to get this done. So Zionism is basically just a system to create the New World Order. And then Zionism didn't come into being until I think 1897. Maybe you know more about that detail than I do at this
I think it
point.
was a little bit before then, if I remember correctly. It was sometime. Actually, let me look. I think it was before then. Um,
1887, maybe.
and Zionism is a big component of the world order structure.
Right.
Of course, you know, you have Masonry, you have the Jesuits too as well,
Right.
all playing a role in control. And so, what about the Republicans putting forth, you know, like I said, free trade, them also putting forth, you know, forming the Anti-Communist League and putting forth that communism, you know, going after it per se in quotation marks, kind of like Roy Cohn and Joseph McCarthy did during, you know, the anti-communist hearings. But in reality, even though they claim that they are against it, are definitely for it. But just it's like a different, it's like putting a different coat of paint on something, putting
Sure.
lipstick on a pig. It's all the same, is it not?
Yeah. Magicians use a thing called misdirection. And I just look at all the things that these people do as misdirection. You mentioned the Jesuits. The newer Ku Klux Klan was developed by the Catholic Church or the Vatican. So basically, they were just creating a group to set up people that were against Reconstruction. You know, which was the sales. The sales job was blaming it on slavery, but it was just an excuse to get the system put in place. So to keep the ball rolling, they kept the Ku Klux. They redeveloped the Ku Klux Klan. I believe it was in 1928. The newer version. There was the older version that might have been more honest or true than the newer one.
I believe the
The
older version of the KKK, if I remember correctly, had many connections to the B'nai B'rith. I know was William Milton Cooper, Bill Cooper. He
Bill.
did an excellent expose on the connections between Freemasonry, the B'nai B'rith, and the formation
Okay.
of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, I thought it was more true, but yeah, as you say, it was a conspiracy back then to cover up and make chaos to cover up the real instituting or reason for the Civil War and instituting this Marxist-based government that's been in place since the Civil War, so-called Civil War. But you know, they just use it as a trap. One thing this government does is use entrapment. One of the laws I was flabbergasted at when I started studying law, I was in Arizona at the time, and we found a statute in the code where it said that police officers could lie during their, in exercise of their duty, which is, unheard of in common life. We're not supposed to lie. But these people can do it to set people up to entrap them. So the Ku Klux Klan, the new one of 1820 or 1928 rather, was basically a way to entrap and get people that were against the new system and keep an eye on them and things of that nature.
It's the
But
same with
they,
them. It's the same with American First, that was started by the Regnery family with Charles Lindbergh. It was another way of whatever the right side of the pyramid is. That it's fascism on the right, communism on the left, but they're both the same.
right,
And so when you're looking at it that way, it was just another way to trap people in who thought that they were America First. Or it's the same with Trump using the rhetoric America First to this day, when we know that Trump is the farthest thing from being America First at this point, and
right,
has many interests that he is beholding and whispering into his ear of what to do, whether it's Switzerland or the Vatican or the Zionists. They're all whispering in Trump's ear to pass this agenda or to pass this, or maybe Trump could be seen as a dupe or a follower, and it's of course the people above him that are whispering in his ear, telling him what to do. But yeah, it's the same. It's just they keep running the same game, whether it was original KKK being set up by the B'nai B'rith and Masonry, or the revisement of the KKK being set up as, like you mentioned, by the Jesuits. It's just them constantly causing trouble, putting bad faith actors out there. I mean, you can see it both with the Antifa movement being sponsored by George Soros on the left, and the Council on Foreign Relations on the left currently today, and you can see the alt-right on the right being propped up by the Regnery family. and the Council for National Policy on the right that get people, radicalized on both sides, and to further get people to not look at the true world order and the problems that the beast system
Right.
is causing. I mean, they've done that how many times throughout history, and they push it in the guises of enlightenment or the Renaissance. They're still pushing it to this day under those, communism, fascism, all of those. They're still pushing it to this day of a way of dividing us, divide and conquer mentality.
Right. Misdirection, as I said, they're misdirecting. McCarthy was Catholic, and he was controlled by the Jesuits, by the way. He was taking instruction by the Jesuits. I think that whole thing was just a dog and pony show
Me too.
to cover up the nature of America was being communized slowly. The progressives were involved. There was a progressive party in the early 1900s, which basically means progressing into communism. There's still progressives around. They call some, like Bernie Sanders is a socialist, but they call some politicians progressives, which they're nothing but pro-communist and moving the agenda along, and they're nothing but useful idiots for making the elites more money. And as you know, and I know that people in Congress make millions of dollars, the Congress people. So they're getting paid off and doing the dirty deeds of the elite. It was set up this way since day one, even under the Constitution. And we talk about that on my show with Mike Gaddy. We're going to be talking about the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution today on my show, which is on Revolution Radio at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. If you want to listen in, it's about 2 hours. We'll be talking about that and what's going on in Virginia. With
Yeah,
them taking the guns away.
or what didn't happen in Virginia when they were setting up that protest as being a catalyst of something. The world order was trying their hardest to try to naturally set up something to occur there in the protest that happened yesterday in Virginia, but no incidents happened. So that was
That's a good thing.
it is a good thing. I was expecting something to happen. I was expecting them to use some sort of agent provocateur to start things off there, but nothing happened. And they're still pushing the Second American Civil War. You'll see a lot of people on the right and on the left both push it. I mean, Project Veritas, of course, them being Council for National Policy, CNP funded. They released a video of Bernie Sanders, campaign worker, saying that MAGA hat wearing people that support Donald Trump need to be put in re-education camps. But most people on the right fail to realize that that's just some guy working for Bernie Sanders, where Alex Jones and Michael Savage, yes, Michael Weiner, a person of Jewish descent, said that people on Twitter and leftists and liberals need to be put in re-education camps and concentration camps. So they have huge nationwide platforms to go out and spread their message. Where this guy, yeah, he was definitely wrong if he said it. Bernie should fire him for his views, they're very extreme. But one hand they'll complain about that, but on the other hand they'll completely overlook that Michael Weiner and Alex Jones are calling for the other side to be put into camps. That's how polarized we are at this moment, Mr. Bork, and how people have fallen back to the left-right paradigm, and it's almost impossible to reach out to people to try to give them the truth of how corrupt the beast system is and how it encompasses, pretty much all of our everyday lives, is because they've bought back in. The left is completely hate Trump, orange man bad, and the right is, the exact opposite. Trump hasn't done anything wrong. There's nothing to do with Russia, and where both sides are actually connected to Russia, both the left and the right. And anybody who espouts anything bad against Trump must be a liberal. which I am not. I hold many conservative views, and I am against the Trump administration. But they crowd us back into this right left paradigm, and in doing so, the truth has been hidden more than ever now because people's biases have reemerged, have they not?
Yes, and that's all been planned back in the 90s, 1990s when I got into this. People were involved in constitutional law, the upcoming, moneyless system, or, what they have in place now, all credit and whatever. Uh, and that was all commandeered by 2010 or so, 2008. They had it all commandeered and, like you said, participating in politics again to get them into the system based on what I said, voters are criminals. It says so right in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. It's the Communist Rebellion, basically, is what they put in place under the 14th Amendment. And people still don't get that to this day. I know if you talk to most people, they think communism started with the Bolsheviks in, was it 1917? Or is it 1927? Like I said, I get my dates mixed up, but America was actually the first instituting of communism, and it was done very stealthily. Was started again by the Republicans in Ripon, Wisconsin in 1853, I believe, was the Republican Party's birth, and it went from there. They formulated the war, and the last paragraph of the Communist Manifesto says that communism will be installed by any means possible, meaning war and death. And that's what they did with the Civil War, killed a bunch of people to institute the system under Reconstruction, so-called. They reconstructed the government to be something different than it was originally. And that's what people are participating in right now. And they couldn't do it. What Lincoln did and what they did during that period was unlawful. And they had to get people to approve of it by voting for it. And actually, they're doing illegal things. So they're put to punishment as slaves. That's a secret formula that they're using. And like you said, they're all involved in the two-party system, which is, just a dog and pony show to get them to, divide and conquer method, as you mentioned, to get them to participate in unlawful activity so they can have their properties taken under, original constitutional principles.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bolshevikism, if I remember, was founded very early in the 1900s, and then I think it
Right.
was around 1917
Yeah.
when they changed it. I think it was during the October Revolution when they changed it to the Communist Party.
Hmm.
But I mean, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, how many people got outraged? And now, whether or not there was, the votes are really, real that people give on a national election, they don't formulate some tallies or whatever digitally, and Trump won. Okay, but let's take that out of, and say that elections are actually real. Okay, people were really riled up this time because it was Clinton versus Trump. You know, so they got many people to buy back into the system to vote, just like they did with Obama, to vote for Obama. And it seems every now and then they'll contrive some sort of scheme, whether it's like the impeachment of Bill Clinton or nominating Barack Obama to run, or Reagan running, a way to get people to buy back into the system and to vote and to champion and rah the person that is in power, and to completely lose any type of critical thinking that they have and go more towards a mob mentality, that this person represents my interest. Trump, that is supposedly a rogue who never hold a public office, when in reality Trump is part of the 1%, and he could care less about us. And so people just hold these, esteemed views of certain candidates because they supposedly represent them, when in reality, as we've discussed, during this show, none of our elected representatives really truly represent us, the people. They represent the corporations and other beholden interests that they are beholden to do so. And they don't represent us. What you would have in a representative republic is that they're supposed to represent us, but in a democracy they don't. Now, some people would argue in a democracy they're supposed to vote by how their constituents vote, but they don't even do that. They just do whatever the corporatocracy tells them to do. If they want, put this bill forward, vote for this bill, pass this bill. It's never for our benefit. At least I would say 9 times out of 10, or 9.5 times out of 10, it's not for our benefit. And so that's what we're left with. So, Mr. Bork, I guess, for the last 10, 15 minutes or so, what do you think people could do to at least attempt to try their best to break out of the beast system, or at least try to slow down its further implementation? I guess I would assume just not voting, which I'm never going to vote again myself personally, would be one way, correct, to show civil disobedience. Is there anything else that you want to discuss, or anything else that you can think of, talk about for the last 10 minutes?
I guess that'd be called civil disobedience. I have a voter cancellation letter. If you want to look it up on Google, it should come up, voter cancellation letter, and put in the letters PAC. Stands for People's Awareness Coalition. You should be able to pull that up. I think it's under pacandlaw.us/cancel. It's a 2-pager, and it goes over, the details of why you're canceling your voter registration. Of course, over the years, the people that have done it, they never address the issues that we pose to them. The registration boards of the counties, or whatever the case may be, it's sent to. They just brush it over and say they're taking you off the rolls. But that doesn't cancel the citizenship, which I've done myself. It gets back to nationality. The citizenship is another trick. Even under the Constitution, is a trick to get you to agree to, the municipal laws of the state, which is civil law over the common law, which is the basis of societal law that existed prior to the 14th Amendment. Of course, now you got that dual system of law, which is the federal system and the state system, which is de facto, which is a fact. It's there, but it's not lawful. And that's been my whole drive to educate people the last 20 years on that subject, because I did my own research, and it's kind of flabbergasting that no one discovered what I had, for the last 130 years before I looked at it. I couldn't believe no one saw that. All I did is read the thing, because I have studied law a bit. I knew what was going on. And of course, the Reconstruction period, I studied a little bit, so I understood it. But I guess the number one thing is education. People need to know who they are and what the system is doing. And PAC has tons of papers. I got my book, The Red Amendment, that people can purchase online right now. If they look up Red Amendment on the internet, search engines, they should be able to find it. It's redamendment.net is what the address is redamendment.net. And to search the PAC papers, you would put in pacandlaw.us, and then you should get a list of all the white papers we put together. And there's tons of them. I don't know. There's probably about 100 of them if I went to count them, but they go from everything from explaining citizenship to expatriation, which is the correction of nationality, is what I like to call it, because people get confused about the expatriation stipulation. Let me read a statement based on that.
Yes, of course.
Of expatriation and what they've done here. And this is the New World Child as defined by an American educator. This is by Chester Pierce, Department of Education Psychology at Harvard University. Back in 1973, he said this. Every child of America entering at the age of 5 is mentally ill because comes to school with certain allegiances toward his founding fathers, towards his elected officials, towards his parents, toward a belief in a supernatural being, toward the sovereignty of his nation as a separate entity. It's up to you teachers to make all these children well by creating international children of the future. That's flat out world communism or new world order.
Yeah.
So they've been at this a long time, but that gives you an idea of how they don't want you to have allegiance to your country, which is your state. And it's the stair-stepping, efforts of going to a world government. Let me give you an example of the current system under the 14th Amendment. There wouldn't be anyone in federal prison if it wasn't for the 14th Amendment. So when they get their world citizenship, like they're going for, they'll have world prisons and different laws, settled laws, international type laws that they can throw you in prison for.
So, yeah,
Outside international based laws as they are now, or the way the international system works.
yeah, because how the world order has to achieve this through their beast system is to uh, denigrate a person's sense of self, to take them away from God, to take them away from family, to take them away from
Right.
community, to take them away from being a citizen of their state or citizen of their country. And in doing so, they want to dilute that as much as possible, so that they're left with people who don't know their ancestry, don't know where they've come from, don't care about their communities, don't care about their families, don't care about God or know who or have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ or God or anything like that. So in doing so, because of that, they have people just don't care. They end up not care. Who cares if there's a North American Union? Who cares if the United States joins a union with Canada and Mexico, and then from there there's a South American Union or an African Union, and then from there, why can't we just all be a one world government and give along that people give up their sovereignty, that people further give up their freedoms that were given to them by God, and in doing so, it erodes who we are as a people and brings us into this grand collectiveness, which is much easier to control. Because people no longer have no a sense of self identity or community structure or family structure or societal structure or even a structure of being in a state. Like if you live in the United States, for example, me living in North Carolina, or me living in the United States as a whole, that's gone. Now it's one world, and that's law, and they have to destroy all that. To get their agenda, because if people can remember their ancestry, or people remember where they've come from, or have a strong sense of family or a strong connection to God or strong connection to their community, or have pride in their nation or pride, not necessarily, I'm not proud of the things that the American government has done and the crimes that it has committed over years, but I do have pride in the American people and pride in the ideals of America and what it's supposed to represent, but we don't anymore, and so they have to destroy all that to implement their system because people just won't care any longer.
Which I think a lot of people don't do today. Your age bracket, your generation. I don't think a lot of them don't care, do they?
I'm a millennial. Yes, I would say that many of them don't, but some of them do, though.
Right.
Some of them do care about their community and their family, and care about where they've come from and their ancestry. Mine, for example, is Scottish and French. So yeah, I mean, some people do. I mean, I didn't care when I was younger, but before my grandfather passed away, I was looking through his genealogy research and everything, and I wanted to keep that so I could show my children so they'll know where they came from. I think that's very important, and I think that something is lost because they've tried to dilute that so much. I remember my grandfather going to the library and doing research on our family's genealogy as a child, and wondering why is he doing this? Why does it matter? And he trying to explain it to me why it does matter, and me realizing now as an adult that it is important. It's important for you to know where you've come from and where who your family is and stuff like that. And they've tried to just take that away. They've tried to take away your sovereignty and make you just a corporate entity or a nameless person within the corporation. Have they not?
Right. You know, I've got papers on that too. People might want to look for the dual system of law I put out. It's under packinlaw.us/dual, DUAL, packinlaw.us, PACINLAW.us. That's a good paper to look at, and there's some footnotes in there that deal with Supreme Court decisions around the turning of the Civil War, where they said they're doing away with the nature of where people came from and things. But of course, they didn't spell it out, and like you did, which is the event or the dogma in the Communist Manifesto to do away with countries and nationalities. Which is in essence a borderless world. But the borderless world is actually, the countries such as the states and other countries may still exist, but the borderless world is no trade tariffs is what they're going for. And the people will just be taxed that much heavier.
Yeah, yes, and people should, anybody who's listening, no matter your age, you should interview, people who are still living who are older to you about your family's history. You should look into your own ancestry and try to do your own research. Some of it, try your best not to use ancestry.com as much as possible. That's run by the Mormons, who actually have some of the most extensive ancestry records in the world. So
Yeah,
try.
I've always wondered about that. Are they the keepers of where people are from, so when it comes time to exterminate people, they know who they are and where they are?
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah, that's what I've thought, but I just find it odd. The Mormon Church is an anomaly in itself.
Yeah, it's very much a cult,
Mm-hmm.
and an apostate, and as well as Mormonism too. And it's not your average Mormon down the street, not at all. It's the head of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the head of Mormonism. The top people of the church and those surrounding them, that are really part of this system, as well as their ability. They work much with the Central Intelligence Agency. Both the FBI and the CIA say that Mormons make good agents, and everything, and they're also very much embedded within the Council for National Policy. Mormonism is. I definitely believe that's why they kept the records. One of the reasons why is because they will know the makeup and the lineage of everyone in the
Mm-hmm.
states. So yeah, I mean that's again just further record of the extensive records that they're keeping on everyone. And so yeah, definitely anybody listening, find out your heritage, find out your family. It's very important, because if things continue to go the way they go in the next 100 year or 200 years, people are not going to have access to that information, and they're not going to know. They're not going to know who they are, and they're not going to know where they came from. And that's just a way to make you just another, a number. Just like Social Security number, which wasn't supposed to be used for identification purposes, is now used everywhere for identification
Right,
purposes.
exactly. I
Um,
don't get that one.
yeah,
They
I mean,
did it. They got it done, that's for sure.
because it used to say, on back of Social Security cards, I have, my old one that was, given to me when I was first born in 1985. This is not supposed to be used for identification purposes, and now you use it to identify yourself everywhere you go.
Right. It's
Which it
part of the
was.
credit system, the debt credit system.
Yes, very much so. Well, Mr. Bork, is there anything else? I definitely will put links into show notes. I definitely recommend that you guys go and purchase Mr. Bork's book, The Red Amendment, as well as, visit Packin Law and read the excellent research that he has put forth. Is there anything else that you want to say, Mr. Bork, for this hour? Anything else? closing?
I think that's it. You, I think, listed some of the papers I wrote on taxation. There's a couple one pagers, and the extensive income tax. Do you volunteer? Is
Yes.
like 15 pages, I believe. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've written that. But those papers are on your site on the page for the
Yes.
interview.
And
So
definitely, there are ways that we can work together to fight against the system. Now, I do believe eventually, overall, it will be implemented. Hopefully, not in our lifetime. Hopefully, this isn't what has been foretold in the Book of Revelation. Many people have been saying that things are as bad as being foretold in the Book of Revelation since, 70 to 100 AD. So hopefully this is not it. I don't know. But I will say that they're getting more technologically advanced, and they seem to be further pushing their agenda more, at least in my opinion, than the last 2,000 years. But we shall see.
sure,
But definitely, thank you for coming on, Mr. Bork. We'll definitely have you on again. I'd say probably the next month or so, sir.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to it.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, that's it for this episode of Dudes Talking, episode 36. Definitely go check out packinlaw.us. Mr. Bork's done a lot of excellent research when it comes of trying to break yourself out of the system as much as possible. And again, as we've talked in last stream, he is not a sovereign citizen. That was a false movement to co-opt a lot of true thinkers and believers like Mr. Bork who try to get the information out there. Being a sovereign citizen movement was definitely co-opted for sure. Just like the Council for National Policy co-opted a majority of the unschooling or homeschooling movements, and I'll be covering that hopefully sometime this year in a large presentation that I'm going to make. But that's it. Till next time, continue reading the documents. Take care, everyone.